And today, people heard her because I wanted to tell her about Felt, and she couldn't understand how the card she received was from an app.
Wow.
Because it was their handwriting and it looked so authentic. And so that was the first thing that we did. Yep. And then we started building our team. You know, once we figured out we could make a card look real and just replace pen and paper with your app and your finger, we started building the team. And the first thing that we looked is like, okay, what don't we do well? What parts of this business are we going to need to find other people to help us with? And the very first one, you know, I have a lot of experience in entrepreneurship, but never in consumer products and consumer brands. Okay. And I knew from day one that I wanted Felt to be a brand that millions of people used. So I quickly looked through my network and within a day found the perfect partner for Felt. And they so we're 4 co-founders. David and Andrew are the 2 that we found through our network. And they are, brand experts. They're advertising executives and brand launching experts. Wow. So they helped us put the whole thing together.
That's crazy because most people would ask themselves, what can I do to save the most money? And you said, what do I not do well? What kind of training or mentality had you developed before then to get you to even ask that question?
Yeah. What got me to ask that question was my experience building a startup with my dad, actually. And after high school, I started going to college. And then he approached me and asked if I wanted to help him with his business. So I dropped out of college, quickly helped him start that business, but we started it out of our apartment. And we went through a grueling experience of bootstrapping. We got evicted from 2 different apartments.
Oh, man.
As we were building the product. But what I learned from my dad was you can literally do so much more than you think you can do with just what you have. And so I carried that mentality into Felt and did as absolutely much as we could do on our own. That means all of our savings went into Felt, hundreds of thousands of dollars, credit card bills. But beyond that, it was also partnerships. It was like, okay, typically, for instance, our 2 partners are brand executives, and they run one of the premier design firms in the country. And typically, I think a lot of people would think, okay, we should raise money so that we can go hire people like that. But I also know that to build a real business, people need to have ownership. They need to be putting their sweat and tears into it. And you don't do that if you're doing it just as a contractor or as a vendor.
Oh, okay.
You do that only if it's your business.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I made them, full-time partners in Felt over a period of time, but that was always the vision.
So kind of like giving them equity, sweat equity, so to speak, I'm guessing?
Yeah, sweat equity. Yeah, I think that's what I would call it too.
Gotcha. So not only that, but you eventually decided, to start raising capital. We all know you were on ABC's Shark Tank. A lot of people think that's just a game show. What's different from the viewer's side that's totally different on the side when you're on the carpet pitching for investors?
Yeah, I think the notion that it's a game show is not correct. I can say going through the process now, it's legit. The sharks don't know the company's coming out. Their first experience with you, unless they've heard about you, other ways, but typically their first experience is right then and there. So, that part is real and it's authentic. And I think the other part, the flip side of that is the entrepreneurs going on the show. We especially went on the show when we were ready. Our product was ready. We were out of money. We really needed an investor to give us capital because we had everything else built. The product was ready to go. The team was ready to go. We figured out all the different issues, right, that you figure out along the way. We did all of that on our own dime. And now we were ready to bring on an investor because the investor's risk was dramatically reduced with Felt. Felt wasn't just an idea that had to be built. It was a good idea that had already been built and had already been figured out. We actually rebuilt the product 3 different times.
Wow.
Because we started when there was a very small iPhone in 2015, and then the bigger iPhones came out, and then the iPad Pro came out, and then Apple built a stylus that lets you handwrite, in a very real way.
So it sounds like, and I didn't want to cut you off, but going back to what you just said, it sounds like you spent a lot of time, invested a lot of time in building a system, a business system, so that when you did take it to those sharks, they would take more note of it just because you were not some guy with a piece of paper and a business plan, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And also it allowed us to value the company with a lot more affirmations with a lot more validation and traction, not just an idea that we say is worth X number of dollars. Because when it was just an idea, we didn't know anything. We didn't know if people would even be willing to handwrite something on a screen. So we validated a lot of assumptions that we had been making. And then we could tell our investors, the reason it's valued at X number of millions of dollars is because we've done these 10 things that reduce the risk dramatically.
So let me ask you this, and, this is not a normal question, but if you had to value the company confidently without building that networking system before you went on Shark Tank, what do you think you would have had to value it at in order to get a shark interested?
So we devalued our company when we went on Shark Tank.
Wow.
When we talked to private investors, it was valued much higher. And, we did that strategically. We wanted to engage the sharks on a positive note. We didn't want to go into Shark Tank and, look greedy. We didn't want to go into Shark Tank from a negotiation standpoint. We wanted to go on there trying to, attract the best investor.
Gotcha.
And we wanted them to know that we're being very upfront. We know they have value beyond just capital. And so we're valuing that differently than we would if we went to just a normal private investor who can't bring, media exposure, partnerships, and other things to the table.
Right.
And so we were just very upfront.
That's the great thing about being on the television exposure, right? You probably got access to tens, if not hundreds of millions of people in a single night. And I agree with you. I think there is a value to that. So I appreciate you really kind of going that angle, because I don't know. I talk to people and they still think you just show up, you put some things on a table, and the sharks want to give you money.
Yeah, but I think it's part of our culture at Felt is just to be very upfront, very transparent, very real and honest. And so I think we did a really good job of not losing that when we went kind of on to the primetime big stage finally.
Cool. Well, I got to tell you, I do think I'll be going on to Felt a little later today, Tomer. And I think I'll be sending out some postcards myself. I like the idea of being able to take the picture and put my fingerprints on it and not actually have to find a stamp, find an envelope, and trek over to the post office. Do your customers tell you similar things?
Yeah, that's the number one reason people use Felt, is because it's the perfect marriage of modern day technology with this tradition. And it's still made to keep the authenticity intact, right? It's still your handwriting. You created it. The only thing that's different is that you never touched the piece of paper. You just used your phone or your iPad in front of you. And I think that, some people still want to go out to the store and get a card and lick the envelope and do something like that. And that's totally fine. That's totally cool. I think we hear like 50-50. Like half the people who see Felt love it. They think that it's awesome. They think that it maintains enough authenticity to send their mom a Mother's Day card using it. And then the other half of the people are like, no way, Jose. Like, if, my mom would shoot me if I didn't go to the store. And I think it's interesting that, our perspective as users is that I wouldn't send cards before Felt. And so now that I am sending cards, they are in my handwriting. My mom loves it, period, because before she wasn't getting them in this at all anyway.
And it's mom, right? Mom is going to appreciate it no matter what.